Hi, Sai, welcome back. We are now into proper Zerayim. We are in Yerushalmi Peah. Now, Peah, as you know, is leaving a portion of the field every year. You're leaving it for the poor. The Torah doesn't give you the shiur, the amount that you need, right? But Rabbanon, there is a certain amount, as we shall see, 1 60th of the grain, and the poor people can come in at various times in the day and take from the produce. And also, Peah is potter from Trumas and Maasros, right? We'll come across all that. The various stages when the Peah obligation takes effect. So let's make a start, Rabbi Isaac. We had a wonderful siyum last night on Yerushalmi Brachas, and here we go. So the Mishnah, which opens up the Masechet, talks about the fact that Peah has not got a fixed, a limited amount. It hasn't got a limit in our Torah, not a minimum, de minimis limit. Is that the right phrase? A de minimis limit? What?
Most minimalist.
Yes, minimalist, and it hasn't got a maximum limit. So the Torah didn't say how much you have to leave in the field. Okay, because of this din, the Mishnah is going to tell us various other dinim that also don't have a shiur from the Torah. So Eila Dvarim Shein Lehen Shiur. The following mitzvahs, the Torah did not give a finite shiur for it, and within Torah you'll fulfill your duty with the smallest amount. So that's Hapeah, which we've spoken about, leaving the corner of the field. The Habikurim, and that the first fruits that you're separating from Shivas Aminim, and it doesn't have a fixed amount. You can separate, you can give all your fields as Bikurim if you like, or you can use maybe one grape, whatever it is. The Chachamim gave a shiur, right? They said at least 1 60th of the first fruits for Bikurim. Okay, some say even Midrabanan there's no shiur for the main mitzvah Bikurim. Anyway, the Ra'ayin. Now, mitzvah Ra'ayin is the mitzvah of coming into the Azara at the festival time. Okay, you appear over there and you have to bring karbonos with you. Now, there's no amount for this mitzvah Ra'iyah. So, if you go in, let's say once in the festival, you've fulfilled your duty of coming into the Azara. You are allowed to come several times as well. We'll see that in due course. Ugmilas hasadim, and doing kindness between a person and his friend. We will discuss that. The Talmud Torah and the mitzvah of learning Torah. Lamad Maisam, right? Okay, there's no shiur for this mitzvah. On the one hand, you have to learn whenever you can, as it says, Vayisa Bayom V'Layla. On the other hand, if you've got another mitzvah to do, which can't be done through anyone else, right? Then, or maybe you're busy with your livelihood, you can fulfill your duty with the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, even through learning maybe one word a day and night, whatever it is. Okay? And this, how far a person has to go to learn Limud Torah. As we know, there's no shiur, even one word, you fulfill the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, and every word that you are learning, you are Mekayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, right? That's what we've got here. Let's carry on. And the following things, you get the payers from this world, but the main amount, the principle, is guarded for the next world. And not only that, you get a bit of reward in this world, but it won't take anything away from your reward in the next world. You get your fruit, as it were. Let's see what is in the list. Kibud Avei, the mitzvah of honoring your parents, and Milas Hasadim, and doing other types of kindness. We'll see what that is referring to. And Rabban Shalom and Adam Chaberai, and making peace between various peoples. The Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. But how can one compare the mitzvah of Talmud Torah? It overrides them all, it corresponds to them all. So we'll discuss what does it mean Keneged Kulam. Okay. Bringing peace is not including the mitzvah of Gmilas Chasadim, which we brought Gmilas Chasadim earlier. But making peace, surely that's your body doing chesed, is it not? So some say making peace between the people includes putting peace between a person and his friend, even if they don't want it. Okay, even if they don't want it, whatever it is, running after peace. Okay, and Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, as we said. Okay. The Rambam actually learns that all mitzvahs in the Torah are divided into two parts. You've got between you and Hashem, like Tzitzis, Shabbos, and a mitzvah between you and your friend, like not to steal, right? Or kibbud avayim, whatever it is. And the mitzvah between you and Hashem, you might only get reward in the next world. But the mitzvah between you and your friend, apart from the reward you'll get in the next world, but you'll also get a purpose from it in this world as well. Okay? Because when you do chesed with people, you create love between them, and they will give that love back to you. You hear that? If you do chesed to others, they will give that love back to you. and therefore you're also benefiting from that as well. That's why he says, you can eat the pears from this world and the keren kayemes la'olam haba. So apart from what you get in the next world, you'll benefit from the fruit of your actions even in this world. Okay, let's go see the Gemara. So the following have no limits. We'll see. The Gemara is going to ask, what do you mean? Why there are other mitzvahs? Rabbi Yama Levi Amar Yitzchok Ravimi having Yasrin Makshay, they was asking. Armin, they said, Lama Laitanina Truma Mai. Why did the Mishnah not include the mitzvah of separating Truma with the mitzvahs which have no shiur? Now this mitzvah has no shiur min Torah. Right? Again, Truma Gedola we're talking about. There's no shiur min Torah how much you have to separate. Before you separate it, of course, it's tevel. But even one chita, right, one wheat is enough to separate. So why do we not mention that it's got no sort of minimum shiur? Because this din, the truma hasn't got shiur, is not according to everyone. It's actually an argument. There is some who hold there's no shiur. Yes, you can make as much as you want. Okay, you can make basically everything except a tiny bit truma if you want. There are other opinions who limit the amount. Right, Rabbi Lezer says over there 1/10 for truma. Rabbi Shmuel said 1/2 of your crops can be truma. Okay, so that's why we didn't want to mention it, because there are different of opinion as to how much you can go with truma. Rabbi Yossi said, even if you're going to tell me that there's no shiur for truma, so I understand. Okay, we didn't mention truma because Adam Ma'aseh Kal Sadeh Bikurim. He says, you know something, you can make all your field bikurim. As far as the din of truma it is, ein Adam Ma'aseh. You're not allowed to make kol sadel truma. You can't make your whole field truma, right? So you can't do that. You have to leave a bit as chulin. So even Mrs. Truma, there is a shiur here that you can't add on to it. You can't make the whole thing truma. Therefore, the Mishnah doesn't include it amongst the mitzvahs that have no shiur. So Hatzibun, they asked the question, Hare Omer Peah. Now the Mishnah did include the mitzvah Peah. Hare ein Adam Ma'aseh kol sadel Peah. Now, surely, okay, you're telling me you can't really make all your field Peah. Well, Tanisam, we still mentioned it. Now, you're not allowed to make your whole field Peah, and yet we mentioned Peah amongst the mitzvahs that have no shiur. You have to tell me the obligation to leave a bit of the field, that's not a reason why whether to include it or not to include it. So the question comes back, we don't mention Truma in our list, okay, amongst the mitzvahs which haven't got a shiur, even though there is a chiyuv to leave a tiny bit as chulin. So, Rabbi Yossi says there is a fundamental difference between Peah, that you can't make your whole field Peah. As far as Truma, you can't make your whole field Truma. There is a difference between the two. Let's see. With Peah, once you cut that first ear of corn, right, the first bit, the first part of the crop, that is like doing the stacking up. Remember, with produce, you have the stacking up stage, which is when the obligations of truma starts, right? It's when it reaches a certain level in the production stage, and that's when the truma obligation starts. So when you cut that first part of the crop with peah, that is making the produce now at a stage advanced enough, which is considered to have a truma obligation, and therefore the din is with peah, before you cut that very first one, your field does not have yet a peah obligation, right? And on that time, you can't make your whole field peah. You do not have an obligation in peah yet before you do any cutting. Once you cut that first bit, now your field has a general obligation in peah. And from then onwards, if you want to make all your field peah, you can do so. So there's no shear for the mitzvah peah. From the time that you cut that first bit, and you're obligated your field in peah, then you're allowed to make your whole field peah. You follow that? Therefore the Mishnah includes that mitzvah amongst the mitzvahs which have no shiur. So once you cut a bit, that's when you can make the whole thing peah if you wish. But not before you cut it. Before you cut the first one, there is no obligation of peah at all. It's only through cutting it that you have the chiyuv of the mitzvah. That's only after that. Okay? What? Sorry?
There is a minimum.
There is the minimum is a tiny bit. The Torah doesn't mention an amount. There isn't really we're going to see, there is no minimum share according to the Torah. The Torah doesn't give a share. You have to cut something. But it doesn't say what. There's no shiur. What? Midrabanon. Midrabanon, we'll see. Now, Baram Hocha, as far as Truma is concerned, before that stacking process, I don't know how they translate it. How do they translate it? Nismarech Hakri? Smoothing it out. It's some sort of smoothing process. Okay, until you reach that stage, you've not yet got any obligation in separating Truma, because we said that is the stage which obligates Truma. Now, even after that smoothing, Big Kishla says Kol Kirei Truma, you want to go then and make everything Truma? I'm sorry. Hey, no, I say you can't do it. Why not? The Tanina Tamam we've learnt, I make whole garden Truma. If you want to say all my stack over there should be Truma, Kali Sasi Chala, all my dough is Chala, La Maklum, no good. Alchi Yeshaya makes us, you have to leave a bit of it, either from the dough or from the crop, which you're not giving a name Truma. So it comes out that Truma, which has a shim in our Torah, why? Once your produce is chayav in Truma, you can't make it all Truma.
I think the mitzvah is to separate it.
You have to separate and leave a bit behind. You can't make the whole thing Truma. Therefore, you can't include that mitzvah amongst the mitzvahs which haven't got a shiur, right? Because you can't do the whole thing Truma. So you do have to leave something which is chulin. Now, you're asking about how much is this amount for Truma, but we'll come to that. It's Drabanan shiurim, but the Torah didn't give a shiur for that. But we're saying you have to leave some behind for it to be chulin, right? You have to separate the Truma from the chulin. Now, since the Gemara has mentioned cutting that first produce causes the chiyuv of peah to come about, the Gemara brings various questions, typical Yerushalmi questions, this coming Rabbi Sai, about the din of that first bit of produce that you cut. Shiboides Rishayna, the first ear of corn, whatever they call it, which you cut from the field, Ma'al Shetehei Chayeves Peah. Is that obligated in peah? Do we say once the whole field is chayav peah, it goes on that first bit as well? Or do we say since the field only is obligated after you cut it, it's not therefore included in the peah side of the field? Right, that very first one you cut. Okay? Also, now actually you're going to ask me what nafka mina is. Well, the difference would be, is the chiyuv on the first one, then you could include that in your shiur for peah. If the Rabbanon gave an amount of 1 in 60, whatever it is, if that first one is part of the peah, then you could include that in the amount. But if you say, no, that first one is not part of the peah obligation, then you couldn't include it, okay? Another nafka mina would be, you have to separate 1 in 60, okay? Is it 1 in 60 on what's left? Or including that one as well? Do we include that in the amount that you have to separate for it? You see? So those are the questions, what are we doing with that first one that was cut? Let's see the next question. The Gemara has to give an answer. He says, can you honestly say that this obligated your whole field in peah by cutting it? So before you cut it, there was no peah obligation. But now this brought your whole obligation to come about. But if that's the case, how are we going to tell me peah? How can it itself be obligated in peah? This brought about your whole obligation. How can it be chayav peah in itself? How can it be? The chiyuv only came by cutting it. When it was connected to the ground, you had no obligation, right? So how can it be chayav peah? Next question. You cut the first bit. There's this refer. It got burnt before you separated peah. Do you now have to go and cut again before you separate peah? Since the first one got burnt, is if you never cut anything, you have to go and cut again to have a new peah obligation or not. So the Gemara answers, we learn from the following. If let's say you cut half the field, and then you sold what you cut before you separated peah. You got that? You cut half, you sold that half before you separated peah. Or, you cut half, you made hekdesh, you gave to the base of Mikdash what you've cut before you separated peah. Now what you're going to do, now you've got to separate peah. You're going to give peah from what's left, from the remaining half that you have, al hakol, on the whole amount. So even though you don't own half anymore, you sold it or made it hekdesh, you now have to separate peah in the second half for the whole amount. Okay? Now, hekdesh. Now, when you, let's say you gave it to hekdesh, you can't get benefit. Lav kasarafu, it's as if it's burnt. You got no benefit from it at all. And yet we say you have to separate Peah for the whole amount, right? Adar, this tells me, if you cut the first cut the first bit, and V'nisra got burnt, it's not as if you haven't cut it. We say no, the chiyuv of the field is if it's still there. And you do not have to start cutting again to create a new Peah obligation, right? Your Peah obligation is still there. The field is ready now for Peah. Third question, Kila esadehu, you cut the whole lot without separating Peah. Atama, you're going to say, Chazra Peah la'amorin. Now, the chiyuv of Peah, well, we can't leave it in the field anymore. The whole field has been cut. So what are we going to do? You don't have to give it? Of course you have to give it. So what do? We set up a new stage in the process where you have to give to the poor. You can't give them what's in the field because it's all been cut. So you're going to now go and give Peah out of Amorin, out of the bundles, right? On the crop that you've gathered in these bundles after you've cut it. That's going to be Peah now. It's not going to be standing in the field anymore. It's going to be these bundles you're going to leave out. So then the question is, in this situation, does there become a Peah obligation on that first bit that you cut? Do we say, well, now Peah is on all the bundles, okay? Therefore, it will go on that first bit that you cut as well, and you're chayav Peah, or not? Maybe now it will go on the first bit as well, okay? Now it's true. We said when you cut the first bit, the chayav Peah goes on what's in the field, not on the one you cut. But maybe in this situation, where it's going on the bundles, right, which have already been cut, it will also go on that which has been cut, on everything that's been cut, including that first bit. So let's see. Huh?
Is Peah not on the field as opposed
You've already cut the field.
No, I understand that, but the whole theme seems to be...
Usually, you're meant to do it on the field.
One shiboilus.
Yes.
I don't care about this one shiboilus.
Well, the Yerushalmi is asking, what is the din of one shiboilus?
Why would I care about that one shiboilus when I've got a Peah left behind?
You've got a whole, but does that include that one or
Why
not?
should it include that? I don't care about that. I care about the field. It seems to me that it's on the crop, not on the field.
It's on what's left behind, but what is the din of that one shiboilus as well, the Yerushalmi is asking? Is that part of your 1 in 60? Do you have to cover that?
It's on the field, not on the crop. It seems to me that it's
yeah. So the Shalom's question, is it going on that one? Is that one part of the field? Is it not? It was cut first, but we needed that to create the Peah obligation. And now we're back to bundles now. So maybe that will go on everything that's been cut, including the first one. Let's see, where are we up to? Native Peah Common. We will learn the din of Peah with bundles from Peah which is connected to the ground. Ma Peah Common, just like the Peah when you separate it, when it's connected to the ground. The din is it doesn't go on that first one. There's no chiyuv Peah going back on that first one that was cut. So also when it comes to the bundles, it's not going to go back to that very first one. Okay. Then we said the following things have no shir. We mentioned Peah and Abikurim. Now Peah, yesh lo shir melamata. It does have a minimum. The Chachamim were the ones who did fix a minimum amount. But ein lo shir melamala. But however, there's no limit to it, right? You can have as much as you want. Now, Bikurim, however, B'ra'ayon, which is the other Re'iyah, this regal, we'll see, ein lahen shir, they do not have an amount, lo melamalan v'lo melamatan. Not even with Rabbanon, not a maximum or minimum. So when the Mishnah says they have no shir, that's these mitzvahs, they don't have a maximum shir. But not to say that they don't have a minimum shir. Peah does have a rabbinical, not a biblical, but it has a rabbinical shir. Okay? So let's see. Is to know Tani, so someone to learn. Peah v'bikurim, v'ra'ayon, ein lahem shir, lo melamalan v'lo melamatan. So someone to learn, min Torah, they have no shir, not a maximum, not a minimum. Okay? So when the Mishnah says they haven't got a share, they haven't got a share at all. No maximum, no minimum. That's how someone to learn. Okay? So he says here, the Chachamim made a share for Peah. Min Torah, there is no minimum. And therefore we say it's got no share, not maximum, not minimum. Min Torah, it's got no share at all. So Eilu Dvarim She'ein Lehem Shir, yeah, it means they got no shir, no Torah shir at least, no maximum, no minimum. Okay. Now, Ma Nafik Min Benen. So now, basically we had with two references. Let's just go back. The first price that we brought, Peah does have a shir, minimum, but not maximum. Then we said Israel, a different opinion, says Peah has no shir, not maximum, and not minimum. So man nothing min benan. So what's the difference between the two prices? V'han chad min shishim. Now, according to both of them, min Torah there's no shir for Peah. The Chachamim said you had to separate 1 in 60, right? But that's the Chachamim coming along. So the first pricer holds min Torah there's no shir for a minimum, but you shouldn't use the wording to say there's no shir, because the Chachamim gave a shir. You follow? The Chachamim gave a minimum amount, so don't tell me there's no share. Now the truth is, min Torah there's no share, but would you use the wording there's no share when the Chachamim came along and gave a share? You hear that? Would you use that terminology? So the second brisa holds, since we did Torah there's no share, it's correct to use the wording there's no share. You with me? So really there's no difference between these two prices. It's what you look at. Do we say there's no share because the Torah didn't give a share? Or do we say, well, really there is a share because the Rabbanon gave a share? You follow? So that's of course, they're not really arguing against all these prices. So let's see. The man having been now, according to both of them in our Torah, there's no share for the Peah. The Chachamim were the ones who said you need 1 in 60. So he said, well, maybe there's a difference where, let's say he's separated. Now think about it. If someone separates less than 1 in 60, what has happened? Is it effective? Let's see. Now remember, the Rabbanon want you to separate 1 in 60. If you separate less than that, have you done anything? Have you achieved anything? Now, min Torah you have, but what does the Rabbanon say? We're not very happy with you. Now, what happens now about trumas, maestras, on that bit you separated? Is it effective? Maybe it's no good until you get to the stage of separating 1 in 60. So let's see. Ma'adom the Tana, the first pricer, who said, the Peah yesh lo shir min avaton, it's got a shir below, ve'ein lo shir malamalon, it hasn't got a shir above. So he holds, if you separated less than the amount, masha nasan, what you've given is given. You can't go back and take it. It belongs to the poor. But you've gone and given too little. Therefore, it's as if you've not done the mitzvah properly. And your field will not be exempt from the mitzvah Peah. You've not fulfilled the mitzvah Peah because you didn't do the right amount. So what you've separated for Peah, right, even if you've already separated for Peah, and also Chazav or Hosif, you go and add a bit more. That's not considered Peah as far as Maser. Chaya b'Maser, your obligation for Maser carries on ad shor sheyashlim, until you do that correct 1 in 60. You're not going to get your Maser exemptions on that Peah aspect until you manage to reach that stage of 1 in 60. You see, when you go and fulfill the correct amount, like the Chachamim said, then the produce that you separated for Peah will be potter from Maser. But it's only when you reach that stage and not before. So that's what one Tana holds. That look, the Rabbanon gave you a share, 1 in 60. You do less than that, we're not giving you a Maser exemption until you reach that stage. Let's see the other opinion. Ma'adom are the one of the second brisa who holds, Ein lahem shir. They have no shir, not above, not below. Masha nasam, what you separated for Peah was effective. Kva nifta, that part, that element is exempt from Peah. What you separated is potter from Maser. Because after all, the Torah did, you fulfilled. Then, I should have brought a drink. I'll be fine. You go then and add a bit more Peah to make up the amounts. What you've added is not Peah. You've already fulfilled your obligation of Peah. You want to go and add on more. You have to separate Maser on that, because you've already fulfilled your duty with that first Peah separation. What you added later, you didn't need to do. Therefore, it will be Chaim Maestros on that second amount. Now, even though even though midrabanan you really should be making up the amount, we will not give you the exemption of Maser on that extra, because you fulfilled your mitzvah with the first separation. And whatever you add is chayev b'maser. Okay? Right. Now, the Gemara is going to have the question, why the Mishnah didn't include the mitzvah of Truma amongst the mitzvahs which don't have a shiur. We asked that, we discussed that. So now, the question is, other mitzvahs which are not included in the Mishnah. Boy, he asked, why do we not learn afar saita? The earth, the dirt, the earth which we mix with the water, which we give the saita to drink. There's no limit to how much you need to put in the water. Why do we not learn efer para? The ashes of the paraduma which we mix with water. I mean, there's no shiur to the amount of ashes you can mix together. Why do you not learn the right yavama, the saliva of the woman who's the yavama, who does chalitza to spit before the yavam? There's no shiur of 7.8 milliliters or anything like that, right? Why not mention it? Why do we not learn dam sipa shamatzara, the blood of a bird of Mitzvah, which you can get in an earthenware vessel which has got water, and you mix it in? There's no shiur to the amount of blood that can be received in the keli. Okay? When the Mitzvah is healed, he begins his purification through sprinkling. 2 birds are brought. One of them is slaughtered in a way that the blood is received in a kli cheres, where there's water from a mayan. Okay? And after that, we sprinkle the mixture on the Mitzvah. There's no shiur for the amount of blood that has to come from the bird into the water. Okay? With the saliva, of course, there's machlokes with this bubbly, the Gemara discusses is that the blood has to be noticeable in the water or not. Okay. So the Gemara answers, well, why don't we mention it? So the Gemara says, we only want to mention things where when you do more, you're increasing the mitzvah by doing more. Whereas these 4 mitzvahs we mentioned, yeah, you can add on more if you like, but ein b'siyasa mitzvah, there's no extra mitzvah for adding on more. We said Ra'ayan is the mitzvah of Re'iyah, of coming to be seen in the Azara at the festival time. Now, what does it mean it hasn't got a shiur? Masnis and B'riyas Pinim. We're talking about when you come in the Azara, that if you come in the Azara once on the Ragel, you fulfill your duty, and you're allowed to come more often. Ava B'riyas Carbon, when it comes to the mitzvah that you mustn't come empty-handed, you have to bring a carbon with you, a carbon Re'iyah, yesh la shiur. There is an amount for that carbon. You have to spend a certain amount of money. Okay? The Chachamim had a kabbalah. There were 2 kabbalahs you have to bring, right? Odas Re'iyah and Shalmei Chagiga. Right? One of them has to be worth a mar kesef, and the other one 2 mar kesef. There's machlokes Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, which one's which? Right? Beis Shammai held Odas Re'iyah has to be 2 mar, Chagiga is 1 mar. Beis Hillel said Odas Re'iyah has to be at least 1 mar, the Odas Re'iyah, which you're not going to eat, so it's be worth less. And the Chagiga, where you'll eat from it, that's worth 2 mar. So that's what we're talking about. So with that, there has a shiur, right? So when we said there's no shiur, it's about you coming. But I see Kaidama Rabbi Yochanan, and that fits in like what Rabbi Yochanan said. Mar kesef and shtei kesef, which it says, Odas Re'iyah, Kam Chagiga, Zvar Torah. That is the din of the Torah. So when we said Re'iyah's carbon, there is a shiur from the Torah, which you can't have less. So when the Mishnah said Re'iyah, it refers to you coming. Tada, there's another opinion now. Rabbi Yasser, Rabbi Yochanan, he learned Re'iyah, when you and within Torah, carbon can be worth even kosher, the smallest amount. Chachamim ain't shamru mar kesef v'shtei kesef. These were Chachamim shiurim. This is not the Torah. The Torah it doesn't matter what it's worth. Okay, but not Torah, there's no shiur for the carbon. That's what he wants to say. Amalei, Rabbi Yochanan said, V'yesh keidzu. Is that true? That mitzvah, the Torah didn't give a shiur, and the Chachamim give a shiur? The Torah said nothing, and the Chachamim give a shiur? Rabbi Yochanan said, "V'chala shiurim like Chachamim ain't shenasu," because the Chachamim always gave shiurim. Kazayis min amei, so kazayis from the dead is mitamei, not less than that. Kazayis min anavela, right? Kazayis from a dead animal is mitamei, but touching masa maga kadasha min asheretz, right? The lentil size, the barley size of a sheretz, whatever it is mitamei b'maga, right? Not less than that. So all these shiurim are not written in the Torah, and the Chachamim were the ones who gave shiurim. But the Torah just mentions the din. Right? The Chachamim are the ones who decide how much. Now, the truth is, Rabbi Yochanan holds all shiurim in the Torah are halacha l'Moshe Sinai, actually, and it's not the Chachamim who set up these shiurim. So, I mean, what are you saying from shiuri Tuma here? Oh, the Chachamim can be kovea the shiurim, but it's halacha Moshe Sinai. They're not really through the Chachamim at all. So, some want to say this shiur Tuma, the mashmais in the Mishnah, the Chachamim set them up. They're not halacha Moshe Sinai. It seems to imply that they're not halacha Moshe Sinai. He brings rayas from Kalim. It sounds like the Chachamim were the one who gave the shiurim. So Rabbi Yonah wants to say from these shiurim, the Chachamim have a koyach to be kaveya these shiurim for mitzvah Torah. There's a whole question whether Bavli and Yerushalmi argue over that point. Okay, so what we got here? So he says all the shiurim of the Chachamim are the ones who gave the shir. Le'asi mishal, Rabbi Yochanan is not asking his question on that. Ela kadol Torah Rav Oshia, that which Rav Oshia learned. Le'yiro ponai rekam. From here we learn in Torah, afilu kosher, you can have a korban worth anything. But they were the ones who said, Ma kesef, shtei kesef. No, it should be worth a certain amount. Ve'kashya. So now Rabbi Yochanan asked, Minzu sabach le'dvar Torah, from the word rekam. I mean, the Tana is learning, the Torah says you don't have to, it doesn't have to be worth anything, right? There's no shiur at all. Hu amar shechachamim amru ma kesef shtei kesef. The Torah says rekam. And yet you're telling me the Chachamim give an amount? I mean, okay, the Torah allowed the Chachamim to fix a share, but that's mitzvahs that the Torah maybe didn't give a share. But these Karbonos, the Torah clearly said there is no share, right? Rekam, even a carbon, anything, wherever it is. So how can the Chachamim give a share against the Pasuk, which sounds like he doesn't have to have a share? So, Rav Yossi, the Gemara discusses now the Machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rav Oshia. Rav Yossi, Rabbi Yochanan Kedate. Yochanan, according to his reasons, Rabbi Yochanan, he said, Kol shiurim halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Right? All the shiurim are halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Do Amar, so he's telling me that Mar Kesef and Shtei Kesef, these two amounts for Karbonos, this opinion wants to say, Devar Torah. They are from the Torah. We're calling halacha l'Moshe Sinai from the Torah as opposed to the Rabbanon. So he says here, until now we understood, Rav Yochanan wasn't happy with the fact that these shiurim and chagiga and so on is Rabbanon. Other mitzvah Rav Yochanan want to argue and so on, whatever. Maybe he was saying, look, even according to you, you hold shir mitzvahs Rabbanon, you have to agree Karbonos must be from Sinai. The Torah clearly says they have no shiur. So how are you going to tell me the Chachamim gave a shiur? But it could be he himself held that all shiurim, even mitzvahs of the Torah didn't give a shir, maybe they're still given at Sinai. Maybe he held that they were halacha for Sinai himself. So what have we got here? Rav Oshia said the share of Karbonos is through the Chachamim. Kedatei, like his view, Rav Oshia Amar, he said, Ha'echel isu bizman hazeh. Listen to this. He says, look, if you by mistake eat something which is forbidden nowadays, you know what? Write it down. Write it down exactly what size it was, what weight it was. Write it down. Why? Because if you merit, and the Beis Mikdash will be built in your day, you'll bring a carbon chatos. Now, it's no good to say, I will bring a chatos, because what did you eat? Who knows? Maybe the amount of a kazayis will change over time. And what you ate might not be the right amount going forward for a kazayis. So, you should write down the size and weight, whatever it is, volume of the food that you ate. Because we're worried, a new Beis Din will come along, change the shiurim, like the Chazon Ish in a way. The new Beis Din will come along, change the shiurim, and by you writing it down, you'll be able to work out what shiur you ate. Do you have to bring a chatos or not? Okay, it could be the new Beis Din will make the shiur larger of chaylev, whatever it is, and it'll come out that based on the new Beis Din, you don't have to bring a chatos. Now, the Gemara carries on to discuss Rav Yochanan's view, who holds that the shiurim of Mar Kesef, Shtei Kesef, Kom Chagiga were said at Sinai. Amri, they said, Chazabei Rav Yochanan ben Hadar. Rav Yochanan changed his mind. In the end, he agreed to Rav Oshia that these shiurim of the Karbonos were actually set up by the Chachamim, not from Sinai. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Amrin, but they said, Lo Chazabei. No, Rabbi Yochanan never changed his mind. So the question is whether they changed their mind. Did Rabbi Yochanan change his mind to say that these shiurim were from Chachamim or not? So the Gemara brings the support to the second opinion, that Rav Yochanan did not change his mind. But from the following you see Rav Yochanan did not change his mind. So our Rav Shem Rabami is Palgun, Chizkiah Rav Yochanan. We have Machlekes. Chizkiah Amar, now Chizkiah said, Adam Cholek es Chovasai. Now imagine you have 2 mar kesef to bring a chagiga offering. Okay? So now this opinion, Chizkiah says, if you have 2 mar kesef and to bring your chagiga offering, what happens if it's a tiny animal? So you know what he says you can do? Shtei behemos. You can buy 2 animals, 1 mar each. Yes, you have to spend 2 mar kesef. It doesn't have to be on 1 animal. It can be on 2 animals. But the other opinion says, Rav Yochanan Amar, Rav Yochanan said, Ein adam cholek chavasei l'shtei behemos. No, 2 mar has to be 1 animal. You can't split it onto 2. Ella, but if you want to bring 2 animals, what must you do? You have to have 2 mar l'chal achas v'achas. Each animal has to be worth at least 2 mar. You hear that? So what have we got? Chizkiah said you can have 2 mar, 2 animals. Rav Yochanan says 2 mar must be on each animal. Okay? Now what do we get from that? The fact that you cannot bring a chagiga worth less than 2 mar, he must hold that the share of 2 kesef or chagiga is from the Torah. That's why he doesn't allow you to start splitting it onto 2 animals. 2 mar must be 1 animal. You want to have more, get more. But 2 mar must be from the Torah. That's why he wants to put it on 1 animal. Okay, don't buy an animal worth less than that amount. If you hold that the share of 2 kesef is only Rabbanan, well, if it's only rabbinical, then the Chachamim wouldn't really care if you buy 1 animal or you buy 2 animals. What difference does it make? You've spent the money of 2 mar, and that's fine. You follow? So that's why he wants to say, the fact that Rav Yochanan seems to say you must have 1 animal with your 2 mar seems to imply that it must be a biblical share and not something from the Chachamim. Okay. I think we will stop here.